This housing market crash will be worse than 2008. Prepare now. It's not a secret anymore that the housing market is moving toward a crash. Now the question that arises is whether this crash will be like 2008 or worse. If so, what can we do in this situation to help ourselves? In this video, we're going to take a look at the housing market, compare it to 2008, and share tips on how you can survive this crash. In July, 32% of Americans were late with their housing payments. Banks have billions put up to pay for future loan defaults. An unprecedented economic crisis has been brought on by the epidemic. Due to the inability of many Americans to make their mortgage or rent payments, the U.S. housing market is on the verge of a serious disaster. So everything is in complete chaos. The rapid market value increases correctly reflect the current housing market, which has grown quickly and lasted roughly as long as the COVID-19 epidemic. Based on house sale price statistics from Redfin, home price growth has climbed in the double digits year over year every month from August 2020 through mid-July this year. Although mortgage interest rates have increased recently, making it harder to acquire a home, the decline in homebuyer interest has been relatively gradual. The housing market slows down as a result of the financial hardship people experience during a recession. Homebuyers may put off their search if they're concerned about being laid off, and there might be a slight increase in foreclosure activities as higher unemployment increases the number of people who are unable to pay their mortgage. In the first and second quarters of 2022, there was a reported GDP contraction of 1.9% and 0.9% respectively. Even while those circumstances indicate a recession, it's a slight enough decline that many economists and financial professionals aren't quick to label it one. Low unemployment rates continue at just 3.5% in July. Is a housing crash worse than a Great Depression? A housing catastrophe greater than the Great Depression of the 1930s, according to economics expert Richard Wolff, might result from the epidemic because it hit our economy so hard and rapidly. He pointed out that even before the pandemic, half of Americans couldn't afford a $1,000 surprise bill. Shutdowns imposed by the government only made things worse. Landlords are unable to settle their debt with the bank when the mortgage or rent is not paid. According to Wolff, we could be looking at months or even years of draining legal proceedings, another cost that many won't be able to bear. In terms of the economy, it's a tsunami. The average American does not have the resources that big banks do to offset their losses. As eviction restrictions and regulations come to an end in August, Wolff anticipates a rise in homelessness. According to prominent eviction expert Emily Benfer, the epidemic might cause 28 million Americans to become homeless between now and September. We're going to experience this spectacle, on top of everything else happening to us, of that American situation where we have homeless people sitting on the curb across the street from vacant apartments and homes. The pandemic has revealed how unsustainable the U.S. system is. Rent should not be canceled to help tenants who face evictions stay in their homes, but they do require financial support. Regardless of the economic repercussions, the Federal Reserve did continue to do all in its ability to push the problem down the road. 2008 saw it happen. It took place during the pandemic and will occur once again. This method has the drawback of only being effective for a limited period before there's no turning back. Even more troubling is the fact that many of the same causes of the financial crisis in 2008 are still at play today. Consumer debt levels are high, property prices are inflated, and the stock market is due for a correction. This time, however, the Fed has fewer tools at its disposal to combat an economic slowdown. The crash of all crashes will come soon. You must first comprehend the repo markets to understand why things would worsen. The repo market functions for large financial organizations like pawn shops. Banks go there to pawn off items like treasury bonds for money to invest in stocks or cryptocurrencies. Institutions are now using the reverse repo market as a result of the repo market's regrettably severe drying up. Reverse repos occur when banks acquire short-term bonds because they have too much cash on hand. In essence, banks have an abundance of cash and are currently limited to low-quality junk-rated bonds as safe places to invest it. Our best opinion is that the use of reverse repos is an attempt to curb inflation as much as possible, but it is failing terribly. However, the banks are sitting on mountains of useless cash since they are unable to purchase stocks due to the high risk. Nowhere is currently a secure place to save your money. The black swan of housing prices. Of course, Michael Burry, the well-known investor who foresaw the 2008 financial disaster, is referring to the housing market, and it's not just him. The present housing market, according to Mark Cuban, is in a bubble. However, they are mistaken in this instance. Like the auto industry, the housing business is recession-proof. Prices will never go away. There's a large demand for homes and a limited supply, and this situation is unlikely to change anytime soon. Although it may not be good news for home buyers, it does imply that property prices are more stable than they were before the 2008 market collapse. Institutions like BlackRock and Blackstone will continue to buy up homes and drive everyone out of the market while the rest of the economy crashes. Buy the smart side of the dip. There is extreme inflation. The Fed should continue raising interest rates to curb excessive government expenditures, as they are already doing. The economy would fall if the Fed raised rates too much, though, as the bubble was fueled by low interest rates and people were leveraged to the limit. Raising interest rates well over 15%, requiring the government to balance its budget, and promoting saving among Americans are the true solutions. Due to our cultural conditioning toward hyper-growth, hyper-government expenditure, and hyper-consumerism, they won't do this. The Fed is now faced with two options: either give in to inflation by not raising interest rates, ushering in a period of high inflation, huge debt, and zero growth, or battle inflation and boost the global economy. We're caught in a difficult situation. For you as an investor, holding on to cash and gradually dollar cost averaging into investments you've looked at and think have long-term worth is the wisest course of action. Spending carelessly on high-risk ventures is not advised. The time is not right now. 5 ways to protect yourself. Ensure that you keep this advice in mind if you plan to enter the home market soon. Here are 5 tips you may implement in light of the current housing market crash. Don't get caught up in the buying frenzy. If you overpay on a home, you could find yourself in debt when the market recovers. Pay what is proper and obtain an estimate from a third party. Try to evaluate the condition of the property before buying it. Purchase only what you can afford. Simply said, you should look at less expensive residences if you have to watch every penny to make a mortgage payment. Put down the most amount you can afford. Your home's equity increases with the size of your down payment. Equity, or how much of your house you own entirely, is the difference between what you owe on your mortgage and the property's value. When times are rough, a homeowner's equity is perhaps all that stands between them and foreclosure. Establish an emergency savings fund. As a general rule, save enough to cover 3 to 6 months' worth of expenses to be ready for emergencies. You might want to aim for a larger emergency fund, depending on how comfortable you are with it. Consider refinancing. Identify the best time to move if you currently own a property. There's no reason not to refinance your existing mortgage at the current low rates if you have the patience to wait. Indicators of home values include the state of the economy generally, geopolitical events, and, as we now know, a global pandemic. Planning for the day the market crashes is possible as long as you are aware that it cannot continue to rise in value forever, even if the crash is more of a soft landing. Well, this ends the video for today. Tell us what you think about the upcoming crash. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel to learn the latest news on the market.